I decided to do this one. This is like part 2 of the Math Ain't Mathin', the 50-50 conversation. Dr. Johnson actually did this particular one about the Gen X profile. And she did this about the Generation X profile and the yearly earnings and stuff like that. So it's kind of been done already a little bit, but I want to emphasize it because we're pulling from the same article from Black Demographics. And so I want to read part of the Black Demographics as I go through this particular chart. Okay, because it's actually some good information. This is an article from the chart comes from, but I also want to show the chart as I read it. As we continue to analyze data from the Census ACS Public Use Microdata Sample, or the PUMS from 2019, the latest data available, the hard truth is even more evident in this age group. There are simply more Black women than Black men. That's always been the case, especially as you get older. If you look at Gen X now, Black men die earlier. And so the ratio, once you pass, I think the ratio is 50-50 up until you get to be the 18 years of age. And then Black men or Black males start to disappear. So by the time you get to this age range, which is 41, 42, basically you have a pretty large gap between the available men and available women. According to these estimates in 2019, there were 609,599 more single Black women than Black men, ages 41 to 55. 2.6 million Black women and just under 2 million Black men. Unlike higher income single Black millennials, this disparity existed among single Black Gen Xers in every income bracket and educational level above high school that we measured. In other words, even though Black men earn more on average, and they do, at every level, there's simply more Black women. There's actually like over 1 million more Black women in the workforce than there are Black men. There just is. And when you count the women outside the workforce, is even more. There were fewer than 250,000 single Black Gen Xers with the average incomes over 100,000. Of that, there were 34,507 more women than men, or 133,508 women to 98,000 men for other income groups. So if we look at it, if we actually look at it, what they're saying is in this cohort right here, the first thing we got to look at is that in the millennials, which is understandable because they're younger, it was only 2% that made over 100K. As you get older, there's 5%. But guess what? As men die out, there's more women. There's actually more women that make over 100K. So most of the women you hear crying about a man on my level, and I can't find a man on my level that makes a certain amount of money, normally they're Gen Xers. When they talk about the level shit, normally they're Gen Xers. And there's particular reasons why this happens. So there's 34,000 more Gen Xers females, that Black Gen Xer females that actually make over $100,000 a year. 152,000 more in the 50K to the 100K. You ever notice that the percentages are slightly higher because with millennials it's 15% from 50 to 100K. Here it's 18%. And where it was roughly even, you see the disparity start to grow as we go down the list. 152,000 more here. 312,000 more here. There's a disparity. In the middle class income, what we call the working class. And you see working class makes a larger percentage as you get older. These are people that probably don't have grown kids. They've either completed their career or getting close to retirement. They're in their maximum phase of earnings. And there's even at every income, every place there's an income, there's actually more people. The under 20K, remember as millennials, I think it was 23%. Now it's down to 15. And there's 151,000 more females that in this category between under 20K. And remember, there was a bigger disparity in no income as far as millennials concerned, right? This is closer, but look at this. These are people, the men over 40. These men over 40, Black men over 40. There's almost three-quarters of a million men that have no income. 31%. Look at that. For millennials, it was 23%. 31% of black people, singles, have no income. And this is the vast majority of people at this level, at this age group. Okay, the married black Gen Xers, there's only 3.6 million of them. So well over half, like 55, almost 60% of black people at this age group were actually single, and most of them are women. Okay, continuing, the number of single black women with a bachelor's degree. Okay, this is educational. We can actually get into this. Okay, the number of single black Gen Xers with a bachelor's degree and higher more than doubled the number of black men. That's 20%. 138,000 more black women than men with an associate's degree. 212,000 more black women than men with some college. But there are more black men with a GED or high school. This is Gen X, and this is men going into blue collar trades. There's also more black men that don't have a diploma. Slightly less. It's not as wide a percentage, right? But what this is telling you, and this we'll continue reading, but we'll actually do our analysis after we finish reading this. There are several factors that begin to explain the disparity. First, it's important to point out that of the married black Gen X population of 3.6 million, there are 126,000 more married black Gen X men than black women, according to the same data set. This has to do with the fact that twice as many black men are married to non-black women than vice versa, despite recent increase of women who marry out of their race. So black women aren't divesting fast enough. Of the higher major factors is that Generation X bore the brunt of the casualties during the escalation of the war on drugs. Homicides in all major and mid-sized cities were at their highest during the early 90s, with annual homicides peaking at 2,245 in New York City and 1,098 in Los Angeles and 939 in Chicago. According to the DOJ, more than 100,000 African Americans were victims of homicides between 1985 and 1995. The vast majority were black men. It is well documented that the mass incarceration of the 1980s and 1990s has an effect on Gen X black men. According to the DOJ, by 2000, there was an all-time high of just under 750,000 black men being housed in correctional facilities, including federal, state prisons, and local jails. That does not include the hundreds of thousands of black men on parole and probation. While most black Gen Xers were young men from 1990 to 2000, 1.9 black men became ex-felons compared to just under 1 million in the following 10 years, when many black millennials were young men, according to the report published in 2017. There are several other factors for these disparities. Among them is the exodus of young black men and women and black families from struggling black communities to suburban areas, relocating to Sunbelt cities in the South and Southwest with growing economic opportunities in the 1990s. This left behind more concentrated, impoverished communities in rural and urban black America with fewer defenses against the drug wars occurring within, and the war on drugs being waged upon them during the crack cocaine era. These actions together exacerbated the murder rate and incarceration rate of the crack cocaine era. In conclusion, black single Gen Xers, there are 650,000 more women than men with salary or wages. There are just under 700,000 more black Gen Xer women than men with at least some college education. But there are only 40,000 more men than women with no income. There are also 40,000 more men who have never gone to college than women. In addition, there are 100,000 more black married Gen X black men than women. This is what happens. Okay, this is what happens. Okay, this that you see here with the educational attainment, right? Shout out to Title IX, shout out to feminism, but also shout out to Bill Clinton to wanting to push black women off the welfare rolls and into jobs and colleges. So what you had is a double affirmative action program for black women. Believe it or not, the 90s And the welfare reduction is actually an affirmative action program for black women. Free schooling, or more grants, more scholarships, opening up the college rolls. Okay, affirmative action for hiring black mothers, especially black single mothers, which led to hiring more black women into positions. So all of this can be seen here in this chart in the Gen X, right? These scores, these things do not happen by accident. These increases, these charts that you see are not by accident. When you pour more resources, time, money, education into a certain group, this is what's going to happen. This is not by accident. It's not by accident. It wasn't imposed. It wasn't necessarily imposed upon black people. This was in general. It's actually imposed on all people. But guess where the effects are? And when you do programs like this, it goes back to welfare. When you actually impose programs like this on the whole populace, guess what you're going to see? Especially in the black community, because we're the canaries in the coal mine. You're going to see results like this. That's what I'm talking about. That 50-50 patriarchal, the non-50-50 patriarchal bullshit that we keep selling our black men and pushing our black boys to kill themselves to actually attain this kind of stuff and put this kind of bullshit in black women's heads. This is the result. Okay. You have been feminized, you have been turned into a matriarchy, but you still want to impose patriarchal rules. It doesn't happen like that. You cannot alpha your way through this shit. Okay? It's impossible. If that was the case, you wouldn't see charts like this. You cannot overcome charts like this. It starts here. It starts here with the educational attainment, right? You're pouring resources into these people. You're pouring resources into these women. You're disadvantaging the men, okay? You're actually making the men disadvantaged. So when you pour resources here, education and affirmative action into these women, guess what happens? You're going to get a chart like this. These are Gen Xers. These are the people that are outside of the dating pool. And as the black men die off, and as millennials get older, the millennial chart's going to look just like this one. And if you don't do something, the Gen Z chart's going to look just like this one too. You have to pour resources, time, and educational resources into your boys, especially in a modern economy. You can't get it out the fucking mud anymore. It doesn't work that way. Your state has to pour resources into you in economies like this. Otherwise, you're going to get results like this. You can't tilt the scales and expect black men by the force of arms, especially in a racist system like this, to tilt the scales back. You can't. I don't see it in any of these charts. I don't see that shit in any of these charts saying that men should be men and come up with resources that they don't have to get the kind of respect from women that are not going to give it to you anyway. Does not make sense to me. Now, the war on drugs, that also reflects in here. You got 2 million ex-felons. That's going to impact your earnings. That's going to impact the jobs that you can get. Some jobs will not hire you. That's how you have so many truck drivers or construction workers that are black males. That's the only jobs they can get. That's the only well-paying jobs they can get is by doing that. But nobody cares. Nobody uses that as a reason to why you don't have more provider males. Your own women that saw you go through this stuff still shit on you. And these are the women that not only escaped the jails, got the affirmative action, got the welfare, got the education, but they also benefited from all these guys out on the block selling drugs, because when they went to jail, guess where the money went? It didn't go to you because you're in jail. All these guys slang dope and sold dope and dodged bullets to go to prison to come out broke. Guess who spent the money? And they're still blaming you for failing. But these are the women that you protect. These are the women that you want to go out and prove that you're a man to. These bras won't even fight for goddamn programs for their own boys. They won't, because they want you where you are. The system is working exactly the way it's supposed to work. That's why the math is not mathing. That's why this alpha your way through it. Prove that you're an alpha. Working 80 hours a week. 80 hours a week is going to get you a short life for most people. You're going to have some lucky people that don't need this education, this knowledge to make their money or to make a decent living, to make a better life, to bring yourself to at least up here, up into this range, the 50 to 100K. And some lucky people can do it without education, can do it without the resources, do it without the investment from the state, from the society into them. But the vast majority won't. That's how come we see all of this. That shouldn't be there. There shouldn't be damn near a million black men that don't have an income when they're past 40 years old, because it's not going to get any better as they get older. And that's a drain on society. And this is where your homeless population comes from. These are the guys that were ex-felons that didn't make it. They couldn't make that switch. These are where your ex-felons went. This is a category. These two categories are where your ex-felons went, which is a drain on your society and a drain on your families. But nobody corrected this stuff when it was happening. And they're not correcting it now, because the same thing's going to happen to the millennials if you're not careful. The same thing's going to happen to the Z's if you're not careful. But the system is working as intended. That's like the Z's, the millennials and the Z's, they're bouncing because they know that black society, the black community doesn't give a fuck about them. This is proven. They cater to black women. They don't give a fuck about their men. So if they don't give a fuck about their men, because if they cared about their men, this should not happen, right? The chart that I'm looking at should not happen. It should not happen with some kind of outrage by the whole society, by the men and women, right? But guess what? Men and women alike blame the men for their own bad luck, for their own misfortune. They blame them. You should have tried harder in school, even though the schools basically shit on you. You should have tried harder in this society to actually make your way, even though the society shits on you, doesn't invest in you. When black men of all stripes, they're gonna bounce because it's too rough in this society, then you're gonna call them punks and sellouts and whatnot. Which they're actually smart. Smart people find favorable environments. Okay, smart people don't beat their head bloody up against a brick wall until it falls. They walk around the goddamn wall, which is what they're doing. Either we're going to get real about this, or we're going to say, fuck it. And I'm really tired of black people, the black community, pro-blacks, the conscious community, always trying to pin this shit on the men instead of helping them. You're not helping them. You want to make a soft life for the black women and not hold their feet to the fire. They're your women. They got to help you just like you help them. It's not a one-way deal, because alphaing your way through it is not working. It hasn't worked for 150 years. Every other country doesn't do it this way. But all of a sudden, the black community is the only people that does it this way. White community invests in their boys. Asian community invests in their boys. The Latino community invests in their boys. We're the only group of people that do not invest in their boys and their men. And guess what? We get the results that we deserve. But anyway, before I really go off and start cussing about this crap, because I'm tired of hearing it. I'm really tired of hearing this. Oh, black men got to dominate their women in the society. With what? Nature abhors a vacuum. You cannot create out of a freaking vacuum. If you still believe that, why don't you just go get your Bible and get on your knees? But even Jesus said, faith without works is dead. We have too much faith and not enough works. Anyway, let me cut this off, man. This is BGS out, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.